Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the DCI part number 655-672 in a US28 finish. So this is just the end of the box. I have the hardware pulled out here. What we're dealing with here is a door coordinator, and door coordinators come in two primary types, but there are really three. There is the bar style coordinator, which we're going to review here, and think of a long bar. There is a gravity type coordinator, which is very common and it's used very often because it's less expensive than bar coordinators and generally don't have any sort of conflict with other hardware installed. And we'll talk about hardware location conflict when we speak about this bar coordinator. There's another coordinator called a universal coordinator, which is literally a bar coordinator, but one that's only about that long. And it has two arms that have rollers onto the end of them that are less dependent on filling the entire space at the header like a bar coordinator will. They have a downside where you can't use certain hardware with them whatsoever, such as vertical rod, surface vertical rod exit devices. The universal coordinator, so bar, gravity, universal. Today we're going to look at the bar coordinator from door controls. Now the part number, the 655-672, is a reference to the size of what opening it will handle. A door coordinator, you must always know what is the nominal door opening. And what that means is if you have a pair of 3-foot doors, your nominal door opening is 6'0" or 6 foot. That's also your actual inside dimension of your frame, but that's the nominal door opening. That's number one. Number two, how wide is your active door? Because the overall length of the unit and where it's built and how it's constructed is based on the width of that active door. That has to be known in order for it to operate correctly. Because then the inactive door width will be determined automatically by knowing the active door width and the opening size. So some review before we jump into it here. Information down below this video. This is a bar coordinator. Widely used to control closing cycles of active doors equipped with or without astragals or rabbeted door edges, and in active doors equipped with vertical rod exit devices or automatic self-latching bolts. And what that means is there can be hardware applied to the door, whether it be locking hardware, whether it be weather stripping, or a security device like an astragal, if an astragal is used in that sense, that if the doors close and the active closes first accidentally, the inactive will not close and latch. It just won't latch because there will be a piece of hardware that is preventing, like the projecting latch bolt of a, if let's say that you had a mortise lock exit device and a pair of automatic flush bolts, if you weren't using an open back strike, if that active door closed first, the inactive door, all it's going to do is hit the square backside of the active door mortise lock case. That inactive door will never close in that sort of scenario. So timing the doors such that the inactive door closes first and then the active door is what a coordinator does. And a coordinator exists because of the absolute mandatory requirement for doors to close and latch. Coordinators are obviously going to be used on fire-rated doors very often because the proper closing and positive latching are the two cardinal rules when it comes to fire-rated doors. Certainly, the job that I'm doing here is in fact a pair of fire-rated doors, and here's what we have on this door. We have a set of we have a DCI set of flush bolts, an 845. That's going to have a self-latching flush bolt at the top. It'll have a latching flush bolt at the top and an automatic flush bolt at the bottom. Okay. It has a passage set because this is a corridor. It's like a tunnel between two buildings, and there's a passage set. Door closers on both doors. But if that active door were to close first, the inactive will never get into the latched position. The coordinator times the two of them together. Fire-rated doors, obviously. But you could also use a door coordinator certainly in a non-fire rated opening. You could use one in a scenario where you have, the same application, a pair of doors, and you've got self-latching, you've got constant latching flush bolts, and you've got an exit device on the active door because your occupancy load calls out that you can have one of the two doors equipped, and that you followed the rest of the code, where there's nothing on the other door that would even remotely resemble hardware to exit. It's plain, and you can see that the active door, that's where you hit to get out. Well, when people exit, you still want the doors to be latched after they leave. You might have a requirement of door status monitors where you can come in and use electronic credentials, a proximity card, a keypad, other biometric types of control over an opening. But it's no good if it's not, locked up and secured, is the bottom line. So a coordinator is going to be used in those instances where it's certainly beyond fire rating. Might be a security issue. Now, the difference between the three coordinators primarily is that a gravity coordinator, that's something that hangs off the face of the frame and is subject to vandalism. If you were to search for a DCI gravity coordinator in the site, you will certainly find an example of that. Those are inexpensive. So people use those, well, maybe cost is the most important thing, but when hopefully there's no potential for vandalism. It might be a professional, it might be a Fortune 500 company that has a large campus, and that campus has people moving back and forth. You don't expect someone to jump up and pull on that gravity coordinator and destroy it. A universal coordinator is used when a gravity coordinator is not ideal because you don't like the look of it, and it is relatively petite, and you don't have any surface vertical rods, and they're less expensive. A bar coordinator, that's the top level of coordinators, and they are ideal or preferred because they will not only do the job robustly, repeatably, the mechanisms are stronger on the inside, they will work more reliably, but they do so in an aesthetic way as well because that bar runs continuous. You've got in this part number, 655, 672, from a 55-inch opening to a 72-inch opening. The active part of that coordinator is the active part that's got the pieces in it. It's got the flip toggles in the edge, which are called the link and the toggle, I believe. We'll check those part numbers. But then the rest of the space is filled with the filler bar. It's literally a bar that's hollow and makes a very nice aesthetic look, and it's mounted to the soffit of the frame. The downside of this stuff is you do have to think about the other hardware on the opening. What's always going to be on a door with a coordinator? Door closers. So part of that part number that you may have seen, 2AB, the AB are the mounting brackets, and the mounting bracket will allow you to step over the coordinator and get your parallel arm bracket mounted to it without driving screws through the coordinator and destroying the operation of it. And we'll go over that in a moment. So in my opinion, they would be most reliable, most durable, but they'll do so in the least offensive way when it comes to the look of the hardware. And really, unless you study the opening, if you're a door person and you look at it, you'll notice it. But if you're the average user, you'll never even notice there's a coordinator around the door. And that's great. Coordinators will be seen very often in hospital situations where there are electromagnetic door holders that are tied back to the fire alarm. And a thought's never given to them, is the bottom line. Coordinators can be made to accommodate other pieces of hardware as well. You might have a requirement for an exit device scenario that can be accommodated with a gravity style or a bar type coordinator. Now, provide smooth, quiet, and visible, tamper-proof means of controlling the closing sequence of active and inactive doors. The maximum projection of the hold open lever and trigger is only 1/8 of an inch. Thus, the coordinator and filler are virtually invisible. and appear to be an integral part of the frame opening. And that's elegantly what I was trying to say earlier. You really can't tell they're there. Non-handed, don't care about the handing. These can easily be flipped over, whichever way you like. They're made to work in high-frequency areas with minimum, if any, maintenance at all. Manufactured with an override feature to provide damage to the doors and hinges. Should someone force the doors closed, they have a clutch-style override mechanism that will prevent the unit from becoming destroyed in that sort of situation. Fillers are cut and supplied. That's why we have to know the nominal door width opening and then the active door. And just indicate that in the comment field when you're ordering them. If you don't, we're going to have to ask anyway to process the order. Available in aluminum, which is this color. They call it powder-coated gray. Sure, but it's aluminum. Now, there are some, and UL listed, BHMA, ANSI certified, cycle tested to 100,000 cycles. Coordinators are usually not used on doors that are activated all the time, is the bottom line. Now, there's a link below this video to the product brochure, and I want to review that. And just quickly, everything that's in the product brochure is just a more elegant, concise way for you to review coordinators and give yourself an overview of what DCI offers when it comes to the sequencing closing cycle of doors. They do not have a universal coordinator, so they'll only have a gravity and a bar. So for dealing with DCI, that's the document to review. And obviously, if you're doing coordinators, you might need to think about flush bolts as well. There's then also a link below this video to a document called Product Information. Same sort of scenario, gives a little bit more detail that we're going to kind of jump into when I hit the next link. Actually, the only other piece of hardware that we've not talked about is a carry bar. A carry bar would be used in an installation where you would certainly have a coordinator. You could have a coordinator in a carry bar scenario. A carry bar is a piece of hardware that helps a door be misused and not damage the door in the process. So let's imagine that your application based on load occupancy requires both doors to have exit devices on them. Okay. Pair of doors. Your active door has a rim or a mortise exit device. Your inactive door has a surface vertical rod or a concealed vertical rod exit device. You can hit either door independently. However, the active door is latched to the inactive door. That latch is going in because it's a rim or a mortise. Well, if you hit the inactive door, what's happening is the door itself is pushing that active door open, which is not healthy. Something will be bound inside of the strike opening and cause potential damage. You've got a coordinator because you need to have that inactive door close because you don't have an open back strike. Open back strikes can be searched online or in our website. Basically, they would permit an inactive door to close first, and then an inactive door to close behind it because the rear side of that strike is open. But a carry bar would be mounted on that inactive door with the vertical rod, so that if you hit the vertical rod, or the inactive door with the vertical rod, there's a roller and a pivot point that's out further that will better emulate pushing that active door open at that relocated point of the carry bar rather than the inside of the strike pushing the latch, which may not actually open because that latch may not have enough room to clear the hole in the strike to release itself. So a carry bar, you don't see those often at all, but you take a trip to a hospital to visit someone and you'll see them installed there, and that's where carry bars are used. So that's on that page. The rest of the stuff that's on here we'll talk about in the installation instructions. Page 1, we're going to talk about with the installation instructions. Page 2 gives you a summary of what coordinator you use and when. And it's all based on the width of the door. Your 655 through 696, that's going to be based on standard size doors where you have a maximum active door width of up to 48 inch. And you'll see that column. And 9 times out of 10, you'll be the 655 through 696 series, width of opening 55 to 96 inch. Specify your nominal door width and your actual door, your nominal door opening width and your active door width. You can see how the piece parts are mentioned down below, and you simply use that part number, define those dimensions required, give us a finish, and then you're done. And they have examples of that down below, of how to order it. So very good. Now, page 3 of the coordinator page talks about how they can do custom preparations to the coordinators should you have some surface vertical rod exit devices by a variety of manufacturers. And it's very likely that you're going to have one of them in that carry bar scenario we just discussed. Okay, so you'll have to provide those templates at the time of order. Prepping a coordinator for vertical rod exit hardware would be an additional cost. Reach out to us. We'll set that order up ahead of time. But page 1 and 3 refer to the mounting brackets. Now, there are 3 different types of mounting brackets available from DCI. You're really only going to deal with the AB type and then the C type. There is another type. We'll talk about that in the installation instructions. How do you know which one to use? Very simple. How wide is the soffit? What a lot of people call the stop. The stop is the 5/8 projection. That's the stop. But that horizontal area that goes back to the other 5/8, that's the soffit. If you're up to 2 1/4, use an AB. If you have a 5 3/4 frame, the AB will work. It's on the outside limitation of what will work for size. But if you have a stop greater than 2 1/4, you're going to use the C style. You will only use mounting brackets if you have soffit applied hardware, parallel arm door closers. That's where you're going to use those. And you could use that as well for a surface vertical rod, non-fire rated exit device strike. You could do that as well. You just got to be very careful not to breach into the coordinator itself. You're better off having those prepped. And I don't really see mounting brackets used for soffit applied hardware when it's a vertical rod. That would be prepped into the device, into the bar coordinator itself. And when you order the coordinator with those brackets, like this order, it all came together. Now, the last document, and where this gets interesting, is called template. That document's included with the paperwork. Here is the business end of the unit. This is about 55 inch in length. Pardon me, 52 inch. That bar coordinator over the filler bar, we've got 72 inch. Let's do this together. Yeah, so we've got a 72 inch nominal opening. We've got 5/8 projection stops. That's been assumed. So your area between your stops or soffits on the frame is going to be 72 minus 1 1/4, 5/8 and 5/8. So 70 3/4. We've got a 52 inch active case. Then we've got the balance, 18 3/4. It's actually 18 5/8 or so, a little bit of room. And you just literally place this like that. You install it separately, and it all goes up to the header and makes a nice, clean, solid look. So that's your filler bar. These will come in different lengths. Once you've got the active mechanism figured out based on your maximum, your active door width, then this will be the X, so to speak. You know what? Let's use this for the dimensions because it will certainly match. Overall width, about 1 inch and 11/16. Overall thickness, looks like it's about 9/16. It's going to be made of steel, naturally being fire rated. Okay, it's going to be powder coated. This is aluminum. Now, how do these work? Super simple. This trigger is locked. What door do you want to have not close first? The active door. This is going to go on the active door side. Well, we're saying trigger. The proper term is lever, and trigger. Trigger like a gun. You got to pull that for something to happen. The inactive door has to close first. So in your mind's eye, imagine my inactive door coming, closing, depressing this. When it's not depressed, no good. When I depress it, now it works. Now you see exactly how this works. It's that simple. Using the filler bar, that's what that's going to look like. Now that might be a little hard to visualize, and I would certainly understand if it is, because even after doing it for so many years, it's still difficult for me to visualize. And the installation instructions really gives the tip right here on what that looks like. I'm going to do I'm going to add on to that. Give us a small little sketch of a frame. Cross section of the header. Okay. Our bar coordinator your door and your bar coordinator. Okay. Well, this AB bracket needs to, because the soffit width is only 2 1/4, you don't have enough width of the soffit here to get it all mounted. So what this does is it literally jogs in a Z-shape scenario like that cross-hatched item. And you're certainly going to notice that those two drawings look alike. Okay, that's how that goes. You'll have area to get it mounted. You'll have room to get your surface applied hardware to it, namely a parallel arm bracket. Okay, and that's what this is for. And that'll come with mounting bolts as well. This is going to go into the rabbet of the frame. This will go into the soffit of the frame when you run your bolts in. There's really no other way to do it. When you have this much hardware happening on one door, there's no other way to do it. Now, looking at the installation instructions, if you read them once and then go through them one more time, I think you're in great shape to proceed with a full-on installation. The first thing you do is locate where you're going to mount the scar plates. On the face of the door, you want to mount these scar plates horizontally so that the trigger makes contact with the scar plate and not the face of the door. That you'll dimple in with enough use and time. So, step 1 tells us, I'm going to look at it on the screen here. Step 1 tells us close the doors against the stops and locate the active and inactive door strikes as shown. You need 2 dimensions, the A dimension and the B dimension. Based on the size that you're dealing with, we're dealing with the coordinator mechanism at 52 inch on this order. Your A dimension is 1 1/4, and that is going to be measured from the soffit right over, because that's where you're installing it with, not from the vertical axis of pivoting, not from the edge of the door, or not from the frame, but right, close the doors and just stick your tape measure up right to the end of the soffit. Then your B dimension is going to be 47.5. That will properly locate your strikes to make contact with the trigger and the lever. You've got your vertical dimension there, etc. Drill and tap these pieces, through bolt them if you must, if you need to. They are not going to come with through bolts. They will come with machine screws. Okay. Step 2, depress trigger and then depress the lever and hold. Locate the coordinator against the soffit against the soffit and strike plates as shown below. That cross-section looking down into the door is how you're going to position this. Our active door is going to be over here, so you're going to take this and locate that right against the soffit of your jamb. Mark your holes. Drill a number 10 hole. Mount the coordinator to the soffit with one of the thread forming screws. That's not it. These panhead screws are what they're calling thread forming, and that's because they do have a thread forming feature. They're tapered as if a tap would have a taper end to it. It's hard to see on the camera, but those threads are tapered. So they're going to call that thread forming, which I would certainly agree that they are thread forming. Get one installed. At that point, you can then test your opening to make sure that everything works correctly. Step 3, close doors to ensure coordinator is resting against both door strike plates. Mark the 4 remaining mounting holes. Right? You're going to use the center hole for installation. There's 3 down here, and then there's 1 down here, so a total of 5. Get your center hole installed. Make sure everything works. Secure the rest. Attach your filler. So the strike plates are on, the scar plates are on the face of the door. Your filler, your active mechanism is up and installed. Your filler bar is installed as well. You have a nice clean look. Now it's time to test the operation by opening both doors and letting them close. If you do want to test it to make sure that the active door closes first and then is stopped until the inactive door comes in. If the coordinator is overridden by the action of the active door, adjust the door closer speeds first. Is the thing slamming too fast? Is it literally coming too fast? And the protection override feature is being activated on the unit. If the closer still overrides, adjust the tension on the override mechanism, which is seen in the installation instructions, and here, that spring that is there, using a number 1 Phillips head screwdriver. Adjust that by turning the screw in the lever and clockwise. Try to manipulate that. I never have people that have these problems with having to adjust them, but the feature is built in. If the lever and or trigger does not return to the extended position or after both doors are opened, the screws are probably too tight on this mechanism. If you're taking that hollow tube and cranking the screw so tight, you'll crush it down, and then the pieces on the inside can't move freely. That's what's happening there. Then after that, obviously you're doing door closers. Mount your A, B, or C mounting bracket. Obviously using the installation points of the revised position of your parallel arm bracket when you are looking at your door closer template. Your door closer template will give you horizontal dimensions, which are related to the degree of opening, but they'll also give you vertical dimensions. Well, your vertical dimensions have changed, so just incorporate that. And then go ahead and attach everything. Don't run any screws through the active coordinator. You don't want to do that. And then that C style, if you study those 2 different brackets long enough, you'll say, oh, okay, I see why the C is used on greater than 2 1/4 inch models. And they're literally dimensionally different from each other. And then if there's a carry bar installed, you can go ahead and hit that carry bar, install that at the very end. I've seen doors installed with both of them. I've seen doors installed with hardware where a carry bar ought to have been in the original hardware set and it's not there. Those doors don't operate safely, they don't operate predictably, and they would run afoul of NFPA 101 code of emergency egress, is the bottom line. So coordinators are super simple devices. Once all the information is distilled down and you can apply your understanding of coordinators to a real opening, they're required in so many instances it's funny that you don't see them more often. However, the times that they're required are unusual instances where you have a whole list of hardware on an opening, but you'll see them in all those cases. Now, finally, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the DCI products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. I'm quite partial to DCI, and it's because they are a company that manufactures a lot of what they do right in Michigan. They are a company that when you call them, I think the owner is sitting about 12 feet away from the person who answers the phone if the ownership doesn't answer themselves. They have a relatively petite footprint, but what they do within that footprint is predictable, reliable, high quality, all the time. Depend on it. It's happening. Take money in the bank. And when it comes to some trim and auxiliary hardware, like flush bolts, like door stops, like coordinators, when it comes to some electrified hardware, they've got a great line. You might see, if you do specification work, you might see the Panex name in a spec. That's their very specialized exit device. The link below this video to the manufacturer's page will allow you to review not only all of the DCI products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. Any questions on the 655, 672, or any coordinator, bar, gravity, or otherwise from DCI, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.